Welcome to Kansas City Business Cast. This is your host, Michael Reisinger. As of right now, we are in season 6. Still can't believe I'm saying that, but it has been so awesome kind of growing this podcast, connecting with more influential Kansas City business owners. And speaking of influential, this gentleman that I have on the show today, actually, it's kind of crazy and uncanny because as I was doing the research on him and his company, we've been connected here for a bit on LinkedIn, but I realized that when we first started Kansas City Business Cast, I got flooded with inbox notices and requests and new listeners. And somebody had mentioned along the way, I think in 2023, when I first started this, you should talk to somebody from Native Digital. And I had in my OneNote at the time, when I was still using OneNote to stay organized, I was like, all right, reach out to them. And this man's story is well documented out there. I want to read a couple of things from his company to describe what they do. So on the LinkedIn page, they are a digitally native marketing firm built to acquire customers where they live online. And this is my favorite from their Instagram account, a group of berserkers moonlighting as marketers. I have the CEO and founder of Native Digital and the host of the From Here to There podcast on the show, Justin Watkins. Welcome to the show, man.
Michael, what an introduction, man. You got to be my hype man throughout the week. I love it.
I've been called that before, yes. Every time somebody wants to run through a brick wall, they're like, where's the juggernaut at? Man, I am so excited to have you. I've been, I usually will save my research time for guests up until like the first couple days before the show. But this morning, I just got into it, started listening to some episodes of From Here to There. And for our listeners, we're going to post all those links, so we don't need to feel the pressure to tell everybody where to find you today. But I am going to be recommending this podcast to everybody I know because, dude, the people you are interviewing on this show, you've had the VP of marketing from Liquid Death. You had a gentleman, the last man that you had on the show, he had talked about being a late bloomer in business. And oh my gosh, my mind has been so blown by these conversations. And just to give you your flowers, from host to host, because I think we often assume that to like do a podcast or to be a founder of a company, you must be an extrovert. And you have said that you are an introvert. And your podcast, the reason why I love it so much is because there are so very few podcasters out there that can just sit there and listen and let their guests process. And dude, the stuff that comes out of your guests, it could not come out if you were sitting there poking and prodding and trying to like answer on behalf of your listeners and all these zany things that podcasters do. And so I have just so enjoyed like first listening and expecting, okay, is he going to stop and make a point there? And it's like, no, the person kept talking and you wait for them to finish. And dude, it's like you're teaching the listener of your podcast a skill in itself just by listening, you know?
They hear enough from me. I have to keep my mouth shut to get to the good stuff. But I appreciate the insight there. I think it shows your experience in this space. There's nothing that prevents a person from starting a podcast. But man, you got to put in the hours and the time for it to be worth listening to. It's a skill. It's a skill. And just in life in general, I mean, learning how to ask a good question and then follow up with that. I mean, that is a real skill. I think I forget what I'm going to jumble this, but somebody was talking about like what it means to be a strategist and be strategic. I'm like, a lot of it starts with asking really good questions, and that's where you're going to get the good stuff. And if you don't know how to ask a good question and to dive into it, you're going to miss a lot.
Absolutely. And speaking of questions, I want to pose something that I think my listeners are wondering. And you know, it's something that I've gotten because actually you are one of the last of a handful of marketing professionals and people in the marketing space that I'm going to have on this show, because KCBC has had so many rock stars in the marketing space. And I continue to be asked, you know, by marketing companies and professionals. And my question always to myself is, what is this individual going to bring that the last few folks with their perspectives are not going to bring? And you are actually the first founder of a marketing agency that I've had on that has a workforce of 30 plus employees that you built from nothing. You built from your basement, right? You've been through COVID. You know, I've gotten to know Shelby a little bit through LinkedIn. You know, she had originally reached out to KCBC, and seeing how you guys have documented your journey. So I want all my listeners to know. So, you know, Justin is the first founder of the largest marketing agency that we've had on this show. And so this is new ground for our listeners. And with that, also, I think I've interviewed other folks that are, you know, proud introverts at what they do. But some of the things that you and I have talked about and the way that you lead from that space and that strength really reminds me a lot of, I can't remember her name. Is it Susan? She wrote the book Quiet. She did the TED Talks as well about the strengths of introverts. You know, I think it's really important for our listeners to kind of hear that, you know, from you today. And on that subject, you've given me so many bangers, man. Pain is information. Pressure is privilege, right? What was your journey like when you decided to start Native Digital and then start adding people to the company? What were some things that you had to overcome? How did you get to where you're at today when you say pain is information? That sounds just like something so insightful, right? Like almost like Marcus Aurelius wrote it, right? Or Sun Tzu, something like that. But what was that journey like for you, man?
Well, the in terms of just adding the team, I guess I can start there. So I'm glad I started Native when I did. I used the first 15 years of my career as paid education, and I knew that I would start a venture at some point. I'm really glad I didn't do it any sooner. I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready. Too much naivety, not understanding kind of how everything worked. But I knew I would at some point. I was going to force myself if I didn't do it. I kind of had a ticking clock there. And so I really just tried to pull everything I could out of the jobs that I had leading up to that, especially as it got closer to that sort of deadline I set for myself. I started really asking a lot of questions at where I worked. I mean, I know our CFO was asking why I was asking about what EBITDA was and things like that. It's like, this guy doesn't need to know what that is. Why is he asking? About a year or two later, he figured it out. But I had enough exposure to smaller firms that I understood that really my worst fear wasn't failure. My worst fear was doing it alone for too long, because I knew that wasn't for me. You had talked about the introversion part. I feed off of working around other smart people because I'm not going to go out of my way to find them. So I learned through osmosis. I wanted to stay sharp. I wanted to have a little bit more influence over the environment that I was in. And so I wanted to build a small team. And that was what I set out to do. And that's some of the advice I give to entrepreneurs before they take that leap. As I say, decide if you want to be a solopreneur or build a team. Those are two very different things. And don't accidentally become one or the other, because if you want to be a solopreneur, but you accidentally start adding people, pretty soon, now you're a manager and you're probably giving away the things that you want to do yourself. So don't fall into that trap. It seems like success, but it may not be what success is for you. So, but for me, man, I knew that I was going to add a team. I was going to build a team as fast as I could. I was very well prepared to give away the fun stuff. I was going to hire people to do the most fun things. I was going to do all the dirty work. And I knew that going in. And that was a big mindset help for me, because if I, got in a year and I had 2 or 3 people and they were all doing the fun stuff and I wasn't, and I was like surprised by that, I might have been a little spicy about it, but I went in eyes wide open, knowing that's what the gig was. And so everything was kind of, my mindset started it. And then from there, I kind of structured it out of like, this is what the gig is. Like, I'll do the dirty work. I hire people to do the fun stuff.
That is so cool. And I think that's the first time I've ever heard somebody say on this show. It's funny how you said, I want to hire people to do the fun stuff and I'll do the dirty stuff. Most CEOs and founders are looking for the fastest way possible to get out of the dirty stuff. And they want to do the fun stuff. I'm going to hire the people to do the things. Guests have said that. Hire people to do the things that you hate doing, right? But that's also, I think that's wise. But on your side, you're not saying you don't like doing the fun stuff. You haven't even said, I don't like doing the dirty work. You're just saying, I will hire them to do the fun stuff and I'll do the dirty work. So, what does that mean when you say dirty work, right? Or the stuff that people wouldn't classify as fun, or maybe people might classify it as mundane? I'm very curious to know, like, what is that in that piece there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the dirty work changes every year. When you're birthing something from an idea to a full-fledged company, the dirty work in months 0 through 3 is different than months 9 through 12, and then pretty soon, dirty work in year 3 is different than dirty work in year 10. So you're just basically understanding, like, I've got to understand how to connect all the dots, and all the stuff that doesn't have a clean job description. That's me.
Huh.
If it's taking out the trash this year, maybe in 5 years you got somebody who's taking out the trash. I don't know.
Right. Good
But
example, though. Some
if
people
it
are
doesn't
too
have a
proud.
job description, it's yours. Yeah. If it does have a
That's
job
right.
description, it's yours. And you
That's
got to
right.
know it falls to me, and if you're willing to do it, because if you're going to hire someone who's just going to take on all the dirty work, they're probably going to leave, or they weren't that good to begin with. And if your motivation, which was mine, was to work with really smart people, they're leaving great jobs. They're not going to stick around and do a bunch of dirty work. So for me, it was like building a dream team and treating them like they're on a dream team. So I'll take all the dirty work, and part of that's like servant leadership, but a lot of it is just, it's not. It's just like, this is what it takes, and do you have what it takes? And there's a bigger goal that you're go after, which is, for me, it was building a dream team, and have an influence on how they came together, and the principles that we had, and the values that we had, and the work that we took on. And that was worth all of the sort of going through the mud to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking, I'm glad that you talked about building a team, right? Because that is something, a challenge. When I ask every guest to kind of name challenges, you mentioned Great Resignation or The Great Resignation and finding the right peoples. We said, hey, I want to hire people. They're leaving really good jobs. Obviously, man, when we're hiring people, and I know this as a guy with more years than I can count anymore of HR and hiring experience and trying to find the right fit and things to look for and figure out. We always see the best self of people when they go in the interviewing process. And I'm sure with you in marketing, you're getting really savvy people, right? Like, the fake it till you make it types, the really strong extroverted types. When you talk about that Great Resignation and knowing that you went through COVID, and I know a little bit about what's happened to the job market in the last like 5 years, let alone even back in 2017, which you were around at that time. How have you found the right people, and what are some of the lessons that you guys learned at Native when you had the folks that just weren't a fit?
I think so. We hit our 5th anniversary when COVID hit, and I remember being really excited about getting to 5. I remember being really excited to get to 5, and then you can't throw a party because everybody's holed up in their apartments and basements and stuff.
Yeah.
And we had incredible retention. Like nobody that we ever wanted to leave left in those first 5 years. Like we had great retention in an industry that has terrible retention.
That's right.
And then in 21, the Great Resignation hit us with one person leaving that we really valued, and we're like, what's going on? We've never had somebody leave. We're in like year 7 at this point, 6 or 7. And then it wasn't 1, it was 2, and then 3, and then 4. And we're like, oh, we're not immune to this. Like people are ready for change, and our industry for sure is ready for change. Kansas City saw a lot of San Francisco, LA, New York, international brands offering up remote jobs, and good for them. They were able to, in some cases, jump to the next spot. But we had just gotten to the point where we felt like we can compete with all the big boys locally. Now we were competing with big boys on the coast, which is a whole different ball game. Some of it was financial. Some of it was just people wanted to change. Some of it was being allured by just another industry or something like that. But we weren't immune to it. And so that was really tough. It was tougher than COVID by far for us. Financially, we were in a good spot. We weren't growing at the same rate that we were before, but we still were growing in single digits, which was nice. It was the hardest way possible. But we really had to be clear about the people we were bringing on to make sure that they were going to be sticky and we could help them and they could help us. And it was a good fit for everybody. I think what we found is that there were some people who had been kind of grinding for a while, and they were actually looking for something that was a little bit more cushy. I think that was a commonality.
Yeah.
And, you go through different seasons in your career, and there's times where you do want to not grind as hard or to be a little bit cushy, or maybe just, hey, this sounds a little easier and coast. So one thing that we got really clear on is like, and we almost scare people out of it, is like, listen, we're going to protect your time. You're going to work a very normal schedule. like on average, it's going to be 40 hours a week. It's not going to be, we really protect your time. And when you're off, you should be off. You're not going to be getting emails. We're not expecting to do that type of stuff. Like go recharge. But when we are here, we're really jamming. So we really time box that 40 hours and get a lot done. And the expectation here is that it's not going to be a comfortable job. It's going to be tough. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be mentally taxing because we're going to ask you to do new things. And for some people, they're like, pass. Like, I'm going to go somewhere else that's a little bit easier. And that's fine. It's fine. There's other people who are there in their growth mode. They want to learn a lot and they really want to invest in themselves. And this, in some cases, is a stepping stone for maybe another thing. We love that. And so we want people who are going to embrace that. And again, it's not like our pace is swift and the expectations are high, but the minute you clock out, like be out and gone, and we don't want to hear from you until the next day. So for some people, they love that. And that's what we're looking for. And so we try, that's one of the top, I would say, considerations is if we sense that maybe they're looking for an easy spot, it's not us. And then
Absolutely.
From there, I mean, everything else kind of follows. I mean, we're pretty high on autonomy, which means we have to be transparent about what we're doing, the context around decisions made, our policy. We had a lot of people ask in the Great Resignation about policies. Like our policy is fewer policies. Like we just treat people like adults and let them know where we're going and help let them figure it out. So that is a little different than some places. And that, even though 2021 was painful, like I said, pain is information. It was information for us to figure out like what is the right type of fit, like who's going to get the most out of their native experience and what's a good fit for us.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I love that. Our policy is less policies. Oh man. Man, I love
I
it.
always say like my wife was a former kindergarten teacher. She had a lot of policies. You can't be a kindergarten teacher without a lot of
That's
policies.
right.
And if you work at a company with 5,000 people, you probably have to have a lot of policies. But we're a group of 30 and we're all professionals, we're all adults, and we're hiring you to understand what the goal is. And if it's not clear, then you get to figure it out for yourself. And that's actually kind of the fun part. So
Yeah.
that is how you handle a client situation. It's whether you bring your dog in that day. Like you be the grown up and decide what are we doing, what makes sense.
Absolutely. So something that that you had talked about, and I think it's big. We need to talk about it, right? Is AI, right? Because we know that you are in the digital marketing space. We've talked about SEO on this show. We've talked about the importance of content. I've agonized over algorithms with previous guests, right? So AI obviously is changing it. We've also been seeing now, it's been a solid probably year and a half, 2 years since like chat gpt became the thing that everybody was well aware of, and we know now too that a lot of not just marketing agencies, I feel like they get thrown under the bus a lot when it comes to chat gpt, and like you can tell when content is like ai generated and all this stuff. But we're now seeing who is becoming adept with the tool so that they can like use it to do some of the foundational things or like get ideas started, and then they're really good at wielding their creativity. Maybe, the ones who are doing really well with ai right now, they're using it to do the really like mundane repetitive stuffs so that they have the bandwidth to like still be creators. Because I feel like what attracts people to marketing is they're usually very much like connecting with people, and they like seeing like people's aha moments and the light bulbs go off. And you had mentioned, working through the AI stuff, it's a challenge without giving away all your secrets, right? Shoot, you can tell everybody what you want, right? But like, how are you working through this sort of revolution that we all seem to be like way too behind on, right? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's a strange time. I mean, we are named native digital for a reason. When I came into the workforce, I felt like I was the young kid that was invited to all the executive meetings because I understood digital better than the 50-year-olds who were in those rooms. And so
Right.
as a digital native, I really attached myself to that label once I understood what it meant. And I felt like, well, this is really a defining time in this industry, and it's really changing everything. And people who were well established did not like it. It was disruptive to the businesses that they had built. And there's still people who are spicy about the digital movement. AI is kind of still part of that movement, but in such a powerful, accelerated way, it reminds me of that. But maybe a multiplier of that. And as a person who's always been typically attached to whatever the disruptive thing is, I actually feel like the first time in my career, I might be a candidate for disruption. And I felt, I'm like, that's not a great feeling. Wait, I'm the disruptor. I don't want to be disrupted. And it's only because we've built something. We've built something that's going to have to change. And when you realize that, sometimes you get attached to the things you've built. Hey, I built something pretty nice here. We really like how we're doing this. And so a lot of what we talk about internally is, number one, the mindset of embracing the change and being a part of the change and purposely disrupting ourselves, even though we're really proud of what we've built and the processes and in some cases, the titles and the job roles and all that type of stuff. It's like we can cling to it and it only goes one direction, guys. So let's embrace it and let's be willing to change. And we've had whole departments completely relabel, rechange, restaff, shift people over. And fortunately, we've had people who are like, yeah, do I need to do this now? It's like, well, we're all figuring this out on the fly. But
Because
yes, I
of
love your
AI,
mindset.
are you talking
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
okay,
Just
so
pure AI. So
give us
as an
examples.
example,
Yeah.
as an example, we've got teams in our organization. We have paid media, we have SEO and content, we have creative, we have analytics and MarTech. SEO and content, as an example, I would say they got touched first. Like they felt the disruption first. And so they have been really quick to change to where we don't even have that team anymore. That team has now transformed into a different team that is around discoverability and conversion. And they're doing as much geo as they are SEO. And so they're
What's geo?
So generative engine optimization. So
thank you.
What's crazy?
Didn't even know about that.
One thing I'm really proud of is that the team who was probably disrupted the earliest was also the quickest to embrace the technology, rather than being the ones who were scared of it and would sit in meetings and be like, "Oh, I don't like this." They're actually like, "You can do some pretty cool stuff with this, and here's how we're using it." And so it's cool that the people who are the most quickest to be disrupted are actually the early adopters in our company, and they're actually teaching a lot of stuff to the others. Creative is changing. They're learning new tactics. There's people who are like already considering like title changes as sort of representative of like how their role has changed so quickly. Paid media, ironically, is the one that has probably been the slowest to change, but it's coming. We all see it coming very quickly. So needless to say, like everything but like kind of the core operations of our company has been changed by AI. And
wow.
We can be salty about it or we can ride that wave. And we feel like this is a wave we are not going to swim against. And so we're just kind of embracing it. And the answer I give you today for how we're changing it is going to be different in 3 months. That's how quickly it's changing. But I think it really starts with the mindset and a willingness to change with it. Even though we've built something with 30 people that we're really proud of, we feel very proud that we have a stable enough foundation to be able to kind of retool. And we've already built an environment that, I mean, every year we've changed. And so we already kind of have that in our DNA. Like we're going to change. It's just that these changes are like significant, not small. Whereas I feel sorry for honestly, like the companies who have 5,000 people, like they have financial might and might be able to do some proprietary X, Y, and Z. But the change management and org structure changes are immense. And the only way you're going to get through that is with really slow rollouts or layoffs.
That's right.
And so I don't envy that position. I would much rather be on the small rebel pirate ship that's like trying to navigate it, than the large cruise ship.
Yeah, so that's where when you have a company full of berserkers, right? They're used to rushing, right? And going. And I love too the reference of the wave. You a Soundgarden fan?
As much as most people of my age, yeah.
Okay. I just thought of the song My Wave, and I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to send it to you because there's a couple lyrics in there that were very much like what you're saying.
Perfect.
Like, this is going to be our wave. Like, because he says, get off my, or keep off my wave, right? Sorry, I will introduce little tangential squirrel moments in there. But I love, dude, I am such a proponent, actually. My consulting business, one of our immutable laws, because I have to be different, so I don't call them core values, right? Is divergent leadership. And the only way to do that is to be uncomfortable. Like, and it's not divergent just because there's nothing more annoying than that, right? Like, I'm sure there's more annoying things, but nobody wants to be the guy in the room, like just asking into antagonistic questions and things. But you do want to be more open when everybody else is kind of like tensing up and their butts are puckering. Like, you do want to be that person who is like, yo, I've been through changes like this before, and I've got faith in my ability and my team's ability, and we can get on that 55-foot wave, right? Or that tidal wave or tsunami or whatever it is if we do it together. And so I love hearing that. And that generative,
Yeah.
what is that?
It's basically just like,
Engine
hey, how are you showing
optimization.
up in how are you showing up in Chat GPT and Perplexity and Gemini? And how do
Mm,
you influence that? Because it's a little black
right.
box right now. Whereas we've had years to try to figure out how you get visibility on Google. We've had, weeks and months with those engines, but you got to figure it out because people are going there for the questions just like they did with Google. So it's disruptive
Absolutely.
in consumer behavior. And so marketers have to get there too.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned that it's touched every area of your company, probably except operations. That gave me this line to how you're using AI with data, something that it's on your website too. You pride yourself on actually using real data, like tailoring that for your clients so that they can make data informed. That's another thing. Data driven decision making is one of those like buzzwords that everybody's kind of saying, but I don't think they really know what it means. How are you figuring out like what sort of data points are you using or going to that you think are really making a difference in this crazy world that we're living in where like there's endless like bot driven content streams, like literally the dead internet theory. I've been hearing people talk about that. That's very interesting that the majority of comments and engagements are like automated, but like how are you guys finding meaningful data with just the sheer volume that some of these agencies are kind of pumping out?
Yeah. I think there's kind of two types of data, I guess, when I think about that question. One is the sort of simple and prioritized. So as an example, like what's the one metric that matters? Is it CPA? Is it lead volume? What is it? And for every client, you're looking at kind of what those top metrics are. You're trying to model out where they are, where they want to be, and how you're going to get there. And what is the sort of data that points us to some different paths to get there. And those are sort of like the simple metrics. Now, sometimes that modeling can get fairly complex, but at the end of the day, it should be like, hey, we got, like, let's just say it's B2B. We got X amount of leads for this amount of cost per lead. Okay, we passed our goal or we didn't pass our goal. If we didn't pass our goal, now we really have some more complex diagnosis to figure out why that is. So that's on the simple side. And actually, I think there's plenty of marketers who I think grasp that. There's still some who the busyness of the day distracts us away from those really core prioritized things. And so when we meet clients, we meet some who can rattle it off the top of the head. That it is so a part of their day-to-day job that they can just spit it out to us right there. And then we have others who are like, well, we'll get back to you on that. Oh, that's a good question. We probably need to go calculate that. So that right there tells us like, all right, who are we dealing with? And like, how top of mind is that? So that's on the simple side. On the more complex side, like some of this even goes over my head a little bit, which is why we have to hire like really sharp analytics and attribution and martech people. But the data plumbing has become even more critical because the data that you want to access lives in multiple platforms.
Yep.
And if you have a goal that we want to get to a certain point, but you have sort of this patchwork Swiss cheese of data, you're not going to be able to make really crisp, clean decisions on that because you may not trust the numbers that come back to you because it's from multiple systems or actually this is double counting or whatever it ends up being. So that is where the cleanliness and the accuracy and the completeness of the data becomes more and more important.
Yep.
And to do that requires a lot of technology and coding that's over my head. And frankly, I'm very relieved to have a solid team who knows how to do that in a way where whenever I get into this sort of simple place where I live, I can trust that data. I can trust that we're looking at clean stuff. It's been well reported. And if there's still holes remaining, we've kind of raised a flag on that and we have a game plan for how we're going to patch that back up. And so that's when you get into like the CRMs and the CDPs and first
Yep.
party, zero party, all of that type of stuff. It just becomes more and more important because what you don't want to do is make a conclusion off of, incomplete data. And so,
Absolutely.
that's probably the two answers I would say there. But
Yeah.
we really, what's funny about it is we have marketers here who have come from environments where it wasn't data driven and it was a lot of kind of intuition, which is still necessary, but
Yeah.
we
Which way is the
brainwash
wind
them.
blowing?
We brainwash them, man. We've got people who come from a design background or a copywriting background, and they're asking for metrics. They didn't even know what those metrics were 6 months ago, but now they're asking for it before they can move on to the next step. So in some ways, I almost feel bad because we've completely brainwashed them into our way of thinking. But we've built an agency that is known for results, and like that is why people come to us. Somebody has told them, hey, they got good results for us. It's
I'm
really hard to get there if you're not driven by the numbers.
so glad you said that, because I want to ask about results. And you made a great point about how all the data is coming from different systems. And I have a little bit of personal experience with this, because when I wanted to start asking sponsors to pay me for airtime on this show, this little 8 pound 6 ounce baby podcast, I had to make my media kit. And I had some very wise people kind of giving me ideas. And so I'm going through YouTube, and I'm going through Spotify, and I'm going through Facebook, and I'm going through LinkedIn, and I'm going through Instagram, and I'm feeling all the pain. I literally, dude, I spend a full day of pulling my views, my impressions, I'm trying to pull averages. I'm trying to tell like prospective sponsors, like how many people are listening to this show and where are they coming from. And I'm trying to help guests. Guests have been asking about it lately. Hey, where do you post and all that? That's why my original email to you is this big, long thing, right? Which you actually read and you responded so quickly. I so appreciate that. But I've felt the pain of going through that. I just want to say to listeners out there, like if you're interested in data and you're having fun with it, data visualization is such an amazing career to break through right now. But on that subject, going back to the results, have been feeling like something that I've missed as I've talked to marketing professionals on this show is, how do you know if your work is working for the client? Because I had a coaching client 2 years ago. They were in the marketing space, and one of their clients was basically telling them, I don't feel like our marketing is working. And it sucked. That business owner had to live in that with them and say, help me understand why you don't think it's working. What are you tying that to? And we started getting into, I was like, how could you, business owner, show that video or that reel that you made, how that converted to actual business? It is such a complex conversation, right, Justin? So you said you're known for delivering results. How do your clients get results, and how do you show the results? How do you guys figure that out?
Let me just kind of progress through it. Let's say we have a new client. One of the first things we do with them, besides getting smart on their business so they'll trust us, is we come up with a measurement plan. And they are saying, these are our goals. And we're saying, as measured by, okay, what are the metrics and where are the data sources of where we're going to pull that? If they have an initiative and we don't know what the measurement plan or the metric is to measure the success of that, we have an issue. If we can't find the data source of that, or we don't have access to that, or we don't trust it, we have an issue. So right off the bat, that's what we're mapping. Now, is that a perfect exercise? No, a lot of times the stuff's not ready. But it's a great exercise to go through, because what happens if you don't do that is you say, hey, we have these 3 initiatives, and you just start doing stuff. And then 6 months later, like, hey, is that working or not? Like, you can get away with that. Like, there are a lot of brands that you can do good work and they just see it based on activity. We do not want to be based on activity. We want to show that you said this was an initiative measured by this. We're a month in. This is the progress we've made. This is what we think we'll do next. So that's the process we're going through. And so just that simple mapping and doing it early and setting expectations is really helpful, because we get on the same page really quickly. Now, a lot of agencies, I believe, would prefer to dodge that step, because with that comes accountability. Because if you say, this is where you're at today, and in 3 months we think we can be there, and you're not there, you're getting canned. And so we accept that accountability. That's part of our promise. Like, we're going to prove that. And we have to know our clients have easy outs. If they want to go somewhere else, they can. So we really just have to deliver every day. And that's just part of our promise. And so there's part of it. And then we talked about like that data and attribution and MarTech team. They're just getting better and better. And the tools and platforms are evolving more quickly, to where, let's say we want to do a test for a client and they said, we've never done YouTube. We want to give it a shot. We will design a nice, there's an example. So, okay, let's do that. You're a nationwide brand. Let's do a YouTube test in Southern California. Attribution on this may be tough.
What's attribution?
Attribution means we did this thing. Did it work? Did it contribute to the goal that we're looking for? So let's say we run some YouTube in Southern California with a small test budget, and we just want to see if there's a bigger lift, let's say in their sales in that area over that period of time. So we're going to run it for 3 months. That our test is going to prove that It either worked or didn't work in that period of time. We believe it'll touch enough consumers that match our sort of attributes that we're looking for. And then we're going to find out, did it have an impact or did it not? And so you design these tests, you run them, and then you find out, yeah, there was X amount of lift or there wasn't, and there wasn't impact. It really comes down to having expertise to understand the platform and what statistical significance is, because you can design a bad test and actually a great tactic just wasn't tested correctly and you kill it permanently because you constructed a bad test. So there is a bit of an art form to that. The other piece that is interesting is that the platforms are getting to the point now where you can say, hey, this person came to our website, they looked at these 3 sites, we've retargeted them, they've made this purchase. And actually, now we've noticed that they've made 3 purchases. You can at any point train Google to go find more people like that. But you have to decide which is the point where they want to say, oh, that's the person we want back. So as an example, you could say a person who has, 3 minutes of time on your website, I want more of those. Or you could tell Google as an example, hey, I want the person who has now bought from us 3 different times. I want more of those people. So that's where the data cleanliness is really important, because AI is very good. These platforms and their AI systems that they keep innovating on are just getting so sophisticated, but you have to feed AI and these platforms with clean data. And so I think that's a piece why we see this team on ours and growing so much, is that as AI gets more powerful, it's only powerful if you give it good stuff, and you can give it a lot of bad stuff and waste a bunch of money. So we have to get good at giving them good stuff so they use the money well. Hopefully that's not over the heads of people outside of marketing, but it's just this idea of finding a way to test and test correctly, and then keeping your data as clean as possible so you can take advantage of the new tools.
I love it. Gosh, great example, man. The other thing too is I notice these little things, because like I'm not a marketing person, but with this podcast, I pay probably more attention than I should to all the little updates and things that Instagram and Facebook sends. And I noticed they just recently, they're doing sort of a cross-platform thing now, to where like you're going to be able to see, just the age old problem with all these social media platforms is like, oh my gosh, I got to post it here and I got to post it there and I got to schedule it here and there. And then which ones work and which one's worth it. And, there's burnout. And like some people, man, they like, especially when TikTok was like, just meteoric, right? Like everybody's like, just TikTok, everything. And it's like, that's not going to work for everybody. But like construction businesses and service-based businesses, they started killing it on TikTok, right? But all that to say, they're trying to make it as convergent as possible. And like platforms like Spotify, they're starting to adopt more of the YouTube-esque sort of things, like putting shorts on there, and they're going to start showing views and listens and things. And so all these companies are competing. I'm very curious about what platforms Native has found are maybe lesser known diamonds in the rough, right? Like maybe it's a major platform, but like one that people are sleeping on that they should consider advertising on or pushing content to. Do you have any insights on that, or any learnings that you guys have found with some
Yeah,
of
I don't
these
know. I
social
think
platforms?
we work with just enough industries that the answer is different for each industry.
Absolutely. I would
The other
expect
thing
that.
is that the platforms are changing so quickly. Like someone's like, "Hey, I think we need to get on TikTok." I'm like, "I don't know, because LinkedIn's becoming TikTok." Do you jump on TikTok or just wait for everybody to TikTok themselves?
Right.
So, like as an example, um, there's the platform. There's also the piece of content. So, like as an example, there about 2 years ago, rather than saying, "Hey, we want to be," like, I'll just talk about like our own promotion plus some of our other B2B clients. It was less about, hey, we want to be big on this platform. We want to be big with this type of content that can live in multiple places. So short form vertical video, as an example, like
Yes.
that's what
Great
we want to be
example.
great at. And we can use that on however many platforms, a bunch of them.
That's right.
And so like that's an example, whereas more of like what the message is and the sort of the content type, and then how do we deploy that on multiple platforms. So it's similar to what you asked. It's just a little bit different in the sense that it was like the content versus the platform. Now there's other industries where you just got to be great on that particular platform, but I think it comes down to, where's your audience, how do they want to engage, and how do you make your message not smell like advertising when you're on there.
That's right. That's right. Um, when it comes to networking and building relationships. What have you found valuable for Native when it comes to building partnerships and relationships in the marketing space? Example, like when you meet a client and you think they're probably not a good fit for Native, but they're a good fit for this other person's business, or sharing what you're doing so that you can have a sort of iron sharpening iron effect in your industry. What's been helpful for you guys as far as building connections in the marketing space?
Let me tell you what doesn't work, and then maybe tell
Sure.
you two things that does.
Yeah.
So very early, maybe through story form. So early on in my career, I felt like I was pretty good at what I did. I felt like I was skilled and in demand. And I went to a networking thing, basically an event is supposed to be there for networking or whatever. And I was so turned off by it. Now, again, I wanted to be turned off on it. I'm a little bit introverted. So I wanted to be turned off. I didn't really want to be there. And I just remember telling myself, if I have to like pretend to be an extrovert and go to these networking things to get ahead, then I'm just not going to get ahead. I'm just going to be good at what I do and hope that's enough. That's a terrible mindset. That's 22-year-old me just not wanting to go and get out of my comfort zone. But I continued that for 10 years. I mean, easily 10 years. I stayed in kind of my small little circle, had my tight group of friends and colleagues, and just focused on getting good. And it did work well enough, right? But there's certain things you want to tackle and get good at. And if you don't have a network, it's really going to stump you. And so I had realized that I had been at a company of about 300 people, and I was actually kind of a big deal there. And nobody knew who I was outside of those four walls. And I realized that's not a great place to be, because I could become very comfortable there and completely irrelevant outside of it. That's kind of a scary thing to realize. And so for me, how I kind of fixed that, I guess, I didn't think of it as networking, but I realized like I got to get outside these walls a little bit. And so for me, I just came up with a project, and it forced me to have to like strike up conversations with people that I otherwise wouldn't. And I think I heard a Steve Jobs quote of like, the world belongs to the people who ask, or something along those lines.
Yeah. That sounds about
And,
right.
you ask, and then you're shocked whenever they say yes. And then you realize, oh, that's living in the Midwest and Kansas City, Kansas Cityans helping each other out.
Yeah.
And so that was really my learning, that like, hey, reaching out, being genuinely interested in people and not afraid to ask, and maybe combine that with like an initiative or a project or something that they may have some interest in, is a great way to get to know some people. And by the way, it's actually fun and interesting. And so again, some people who know me, they're like, you're not an introvert. I'm like, yeah, I just have to be one for work. I have to be an extrovert for work, but I really like this type of one-on-one type stuff, right? I would much rather have a conversation one-on-one with Michael than to go to a big event with 300 people and then try to find a reason to talk to you, right? So
Yeah,
that's kind of what works
absolutely.
for me, and I embrace that. And so I've done a lot of one-on-one conversations over the years, and that's what works for me. But yeah, you're not going to see me at a lot of events like walking around talking with people. It's just not my jam. And so I had to figure out what it was. But I'm no longer the anti-networking person that I was when I was younger. I realized that the longer you go in their career, like business is people, you got to get to know people and how to interact with them.
Yeah, everybody's in the people business, right? It's funny. People often archetype me, I guess, as an extrovert. I consider myself an ambivert. I am mostly introvert. I go to events like, yeah, actually yesterday for my full-time job, I was at a golf tournament volunteering on hole 14. And man, I'm just lit up all day long. I'm wearing my pit vipers and I'm just like getting people engaged and involved, and I'm building connections. And dude, what do I do when I get home? I tell my wife and kids, I can't talk for about 20 minutes. I just need some silence. And on the car ride. And sometimes when I pull up to the house, I sit in the car for like 10 minutes, right? I've been hearing a lot of my favorite influencers say, like, practice just like calming yourself before you go home. So also too, I don't bring in the stresses or the anxieties of the day, but I've looked at it as like, I think everybody kind of has a switch, but there are definitely people who get charged up and they're full bore extroverts. I've met those people. I've tested this theory, but I just find so much value in these one-to-one conversations as well. Like we're 47 minutes into this conversation. I feel like I've known you for a lot longer. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just you're able to just connect, even if it's like I've heard that comparison, like to the Platte River, like an inch deep and a mile wide. But when you're with people one to one, it's like an inch wide and a mile deep. Like you can actually uh you can solve problems together, you can make connections that then build trust, like you're saying. And it's just so important, man. I'm very curious too. With you, you said you have a tight group of friends. I perceive you as a very motivating person. Like, I've watched the things that you share online. I see what people are sharing about Native, people who work at Native, the events you guys have. I mean, it's really cool. Who inspires you? Who motivates you? Where do you go, man, when you're not feeling like getting to work that day, or not having a conversation, that you need to have? What kind of pumps you up? How do you stay disciplined and motivated?
So the first thing that came to mind, I was just sharing this story. My grandmother had a big influence on me growing up, and she had two little sayings that she said to. I felt like she was just talking to me. Apparently, this is advice she gave to everybody she ever met, but I thought it was just to me. And one of them was, "You can do anything you set your mind to," and she said that to me on repeat, like on repeat. And she said it in such a way that I just believed it. She looked me right in the eyes, and I thought she was talking about me. Like, there's something about me that's special, and if I really set my mind to it, I can do it. And again, like, I've talked to other people in my family, like, "Oh yeah, she told me that too," but it really stuck with me. And I will say, I think the root of any kind of confidence that I've had has come through, like, just really believing that, like, if you want to do something, the only person that can stop you is you. So commit to it. And, I just have believed that since I was a little kid. What I've learned later in life is that there's an art form to structuring your goals and breaking it down and creating good habits and being disciplined about that. And I've seen the fruits of that to where I've become very passionate about that. And probably the biggest kick I get now is helping people realize their potential and, like, just maximizing what they can do.
Yes,
Whether
sir.
that's every time I meet a client and they say, "Oh, we can't figure this out," like, I don't care who they are. I want to help them, especially if I think I can't help them. I'm like, let's structure this thing out and let's get there, man. Like, it's so motivating to me. I don't care what industry they're in. I don't care if it's dirty work or fun work or award winning. Who cares, man? I want to go from there to there. That's super fun to me. It's the same with, the people on my staff. I see all this potential in them. I'm like, I can picture them in 10 years and what they can do. And it's like, I want to help them to understand, like, this is where you're at. If you really want to go here, like, these are the steps you can do it. We can help you get there. That to me is so much fun. People ask me about, like, the work that we do that I'm excited about. It's like, man, it's not the work. It's like the potential that we can help people realize in themselves and then as a team, like that. There's just nothing more interesting to me. It annoys my kids to death. They're 13 and 17, and they call me motivational dad because I'm always talking about, like, hey, what's your goal? What are we working on here? Dad, give it a rest, but I can't help it.
Yeah, I love it how your business is your vehicle for doing that, helping people grow, man.
Absolutely.
And I honestly, I believe that's where a lot of true deep joy is when people can live in that tension. Previous guest on the show, Brad Chandler, I'm happy, proud to drop his name. Maybe somebody I should try and connect you with as well. He's new to Kansas City, but he's got a great philosophy on that. He's saying, he talks about making varsity, and how, like, we should always kind of be making varsity, like we're always on our way, and there's this tension in this path, this journey that we're on. And I feel like true joy comes with, like, with what you're doing. I can see it, I can hear it in your voice, dude, about, like, it's not necessarily even about, like, the business, the metrics, the goals. Those are part of it. That's why I get to do what I do, but it's about growing people and investing in people. And gosh, I mean, we're watching Star Wars the other day, and I heard Yoda say, there's no try, only do or do not. And I put it on pause, and I let my 5-year-old and my 8-year-old hear it again, and it's like, yeah, man, I want them to have, I think John Acuff talks about soundtracks in the head. I want them to replay that, and I want that for your kids too. Like, dude, man, when life when they graduate and they get and they're adults, they're going to be remembering those times when motivational dad was just, those are going to become mantras for them, hopefully, right? We want to give people something that will last, because man, I went to a funeral recently, and it dawned on me again that legacy is the only thing that we leave when we die, right? I mean, I guess you could argue some other things too, but people are going to remember you and the impact. And on that subject, just because I know we've got to wrap it up here, but what's next for you in Native Digital? What do you think the next 5 years are going to look like? Whatever you can say. Maybe you guys are in strategic planning for the future right now or not. But what's going to be next? What can we kind of look out for from you in Native Digital?
Good question. There's a couple of things that won't change. One is we started as a place to build a dream team where people really wanted to work and grow, and that will not change. I mean, I don't recommend that as a great business strategy, but it was our motivation. Like, we were talent first. We didn't pick an industry. We didn't pick a service. We wanted to build a place where the best talent was, and we figured that we'd always be fine if we had the best talent. And then we kind of figured out the industries and the services after the fact. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's that smart, but it was the motivation that we had. And so we've stuck with that. And anytime we try to pretend that it's something else, it's not, it doesn't work. So
wow,
that will continue to be the case, a place where the best talent wants to be and grow. What also won't change, I don't think, is just being known for results. I think the way we go about them and maybe who we do them for will continue to evolve, and that it always has evolved. But again, it just comes down to, can you help us achieve X, Y, and Z? Yeah. And we're going to figure that out. So now from there, that's about it. Everything else is fair game. And I actually think AI has been such a disruptive force that we want to be right there with it. And I think we're in a position now where we realize, like, we refuse to be disrupted, because we're going to disrupt ourselves, and we're going to embrace it as fully as we can. And we might even piss off some competitors in the process because, and that's kind of the motivation we have. The speed at which we hit results, the way we price it, the way we do engagement, things that maybe we cut out of the process because it's unnecessary. All of that is fair game for us right now. And it's scary, but it's also motivating, because the motivating part is you think about the rest of the industry who's not going to do that. And that's what gets you excited, to be a little bit of a thorn in their side that you're doing it and they didn't dare to do it. I think that's the stuff that really gets us. It takes it from scary to fun, because you're being a little bit more daring on that front. So I think that's and the other thing is, like, in 5 years, like I mentioned, those two core pieces with talent and results, like everything else is fair game, and I think that's the fun, is you get to keep reinventing. I love the change of our industry. It's moving so quickly, but you can make that a fun game for yourself if you're willing to do it.
Absolutely. So it's not often that us podcasters get to be interviewed. And, we didn't talk about anything from here to there as well. And I'm more than willing to have you on the show again, Justin. You can come back anytime you want, man. But what did we not cover? What do you want to sign us off with today?
Well, from here to there's a great one. We talked about that earlier. You said you went to the funeral, and what do we have? To me, it's like part of this whole game is passing the torch backwards. Like, what do you learn and how can you pass it on to other people? That's what that mentorship podcast is about. It's about talking with people who've really achieved something. I mean, I'm super stoked about the guests that we've had on there. I mean, some really big time CMOs with great
experience. Incredible, dude.
Yeah. And hearing their path, they've all taken unusual paths to where they're at. Having them pass down their information to younger marketers, and frankly to people like us who are leaders and can take that information as well and pass it down. I think it's great. And so that's kind of, you can see a little bit of where I'm at in my career, where it's like, I want to pass it down and I want to help other people pass it down. What I didn't expect to get out of that podcast is that it's helped me become a better leader, because I'm stealing their wisdom and then passing it down to my team as well. So it's good stuff. Check out an episode if you see a guest on there that you think is interesting.
Absolutely. It's like reading on steroids, man. I mean, when you get to talk to people and pick their brain and you got them captive for an hour, it's super cool. It's a transformative experience. Man, Justin, I am so honored that you came on the show, man. Thank you so much for just blessing us with your learnings, your wisdom, and man, we'll have to do it again sometime soon. We'll make sure that all of your links are in the show notes. Everybody, go out and follow Native Digital on all of the platforms we're going to link. Pay attention to this company. Follow Justin. He is absolutely a thought leader in this space. Somebody that, even if you are not in marketing, you are going to gain some nuggets of wisdom from this man right here. Again, Justin Watkins, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Appreciate it. And Michael, I got to say, I know this type of show takes a lot of effort as another person who puts in this type of work. Kansas City needs more of you. So keep it up, man. Even when it's a tough enough effort, Kansas City needs it. So appreciate everything you're doing.